Lieutenant Colonel John K. Waters, Patton's son-in-law and senior American officer at Oflag XIII-B. His dual role as both hostage and commander creates the most compelling personal stakes, connecting Patton's controversial decision directly to human consequences. You do not send a task force 60 miles behind enemy lines. Not in March 1945. Not when your spearheads are already stretched thin, racing across Germany faster than supply lines can follow. Not when every armored division, every tank, every gallon of fuel is accounted for in the grand strategy to crush the Third Reich. The rule was simple: forge and blood across 2 world wars. Deep penetration raids are suicide missions. The mathematics are brutal. 60 miles into hostile territory means 60 miles of exposed flanks. It means no air support if the weather turns. It means ammunition you cannot replace and wounded you cannot evacuate. Every mile deeper is another mile you have to fight back through. The German High Command knew this rule. They had written it themselves in their doctrine, learned it in their defeats. By March 1945, they were retreating, yes, falling back across the Rhine, abandoning the Siegfried Line, but they still held the interior. They still had reserve divisions, tank destroyers, and fanatical SS units willing to die for every kilometer of German soil. So prisoner of war camps deep in Bavaria? Unreachable. The men captured at Kasserine Pass at the Battle of the Bulge, the pilots shot down over the Reich. They would have to wait for the systematic Allied advance. Liberation would come eventually, methodically, safely. That was the rule. But on March 26, 1945, one general broke it, and the panic that followed revealed just how fragile Germany's collapse truly was. His name was Lieutenant Colonel John Knight Waters, and on this particular Tuesday morning in March, he is 34 years old, standing in the muddy assembly area of Oflag XIII-B near Hammelburg, Bavaria, wondering if today is the day the SS decides to murder every prisoner before the Americans arrive. Waters has been a prisoner for 2 years, 3 months, and 17 days. Captured in Tunisia in February 1943, when his tank battalion was overrun at the Kasserine Pass. The Germans recognized his name immediately. He's married to Beatrice Patton, daughter of Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., the most famous field commander in European theater. That connection saved his life and made it infinitely more complicated. The camp holds 1,500 Americans, officers mostly, men who watched the war through barbed wire, listening to the distant rumble of artillery creeping closer week by week. They know the Reich is dying. The guards know it too. You can see it in their faces. The way discipline is frayed, the way the food has deteriorated from barely adequate to starvation rations. But dying empires are the most dangerous kind. 60 miles west, George Patton's Third Army is carving through Germany like a blowtorch through butter. His 4th Armored Division crossed the Rhine on March 22nd. 4 days ago. They're not advancing. They're sprinting. Towns that German commanders expected to defend for weeks fall in hours. Resistance collapses not because the Wehrmacht won't fight, but because Patton's columns are everywhere at once, appearing in rear areas, cutting supply lines, spreading chaos. But Patton knows something no one else does. He knows his son-in-law is in Hammelburg. He's known for months. The Red Cross confirmed it. Intelligence reports verified it. And now his armored spearheads are within striking distance. The professional general in Patton knows the math doesn't work. Hammelburg sits 60 miles behind fluid enemy lines. The camps hold 1,500 men, but only 300 are fit enough to march. You'd need a full combat command to secure the area, evacuate the prisoners, and hold open a corridor back to American lines. He doesn't have those resources. Every tank is needed for the drive toward Czechoslovakia, the race to beat the Soviets to Prague. But the father-in-law in Patton sees his daughter's husband starving in a camp that might be liquidated any day now. On March 26th, at 0500 hours, he makes the call. Task Force Baum, named for his commander, Captain Abraham Baum, receives its orders. 16 tanks, 27 half-tracks, 57 vehicles total. 307 men from the 4th Armored Division's Reserve Combat Command. Their mission: drive 60 miles into Germany, liberate Oflag XIII-B, bring back 1,500 prisoners. Every staff officer who sees the plan knows it's insane. The numbers don't work. The logistics are impossible. But orders are orders. At 1800 hours on March 26, Task Force Baum rolls out of Aschaffenburg, heading east into the gathering darkness. None of them know they're about to trigger a strategic earthquake. The column moves fast, 35 miles per hour on the open roads, engines roaring, treads chewing through the German night. Captain Baum rides in the lead tank. 24 years old, West Point class of 1942, chosen because he's aggressive and because his career is expendable if this goes sideways. The first town falls without a shot. The garrison, rear echelon troops, supply clerks, scatters at the sight of Sherman tanks materializing out of the darkness. Baum doesn't stop. He can't. The only advantage he has is speed, the shock of American armor appearing where no American armor should exist. But Germany is not empty. At the village of Gmunden, 15 miles in, reality arrives. A German truck convoy, 30 vehicles carrying ammunition and reinforcements to the front, rounds a corner and drives directly into Baum's vanguard. The Americans open fire. Tracers rip through canvas-covered trucks. Fuel tanks explode. German soldiers bail out, scrambling for ditches, returning fire with small arms that ping uselessly off Sherman armor. 3 minutes of violence in Gmunden's main street is a burning corridor of wrecked vehicles and bodies. Baum loses his first tank to a Panzerfaust, a German soldier running from a doorway, firing at point-blank range, the shaped charge punching to the Sherman side armor. 4 men burn. The column keeps moving. 25 miles in, they hit their first prepared position, a bridge over the Saale River, defended by Wehrmacht infantry with machine guns and mortars. Baum can't go around. The terrain forces him forward. He orders direct assault. The Shermans fire on the move, high explosive shells demolishing the German positions. Half-tracks surge across the bridge, infantry dismounting under fire, clearing trenches with grenades and rifle fire. The bridge is theirs in 11 minutes. Cost: 7 wounded, 2 more tanks damaged. But every gunshot, every explosion, every burning vehicle is a signal flare announcing American presence deep behind German lines. At German 7th Army headquarters in Würzburg, the reports come flooding in. American armor at Gmunden, American tanks at Hammelburg, American forces operating 60 kilometers east of the established front line. The German commanders stare at their maps in disbelief. If Americans can reach Hammelburg, they can reach anywhere. Supply depots, command posts, the communications hubs that coordinate the entire defensive line. The Wehrmacht isn't fighting front anymore. They're fighting penetrations, breakthroughs, armored raids that appear and disappear like ghosts. Panic spreads. Every available unit, training battalions, tank destroyers pull from other sectors, even Luftwaffe ground crews with rifles, receives orders, converge on Hammelburg, seal the penetration, destroy the American column. But Baum doesn't know this yet. At 0300 hours on March 27th, 57 hours after departure, Task Force Baum rolls up to the gates of Oflag XIII-B. Searchlights snap on. German guards fire wildly from towers, more from terror than tactics. American machine guns cut them down. A Sherman puts a 75mm shell through the main gate. The gate collapses. 1,500 American prisoners, woken by explosions, stream into the compound yards, screaming, weeping, embracing their liberators. Men who haven't seen an American uniform in years mob the tanks. Some are laughing. Some are crying. Most are skeletal. The camp's rations have been cut to near starvation levels for months. Captain Baum finds Lieutenant Colonel Waters near the camp headquarters. Waters is calm, professional, despite 2 years of captivity. He salutes. "Glad to see you, Captain." Baum explains the situation. They have 300 fighting men, 1,500 liberated prisoners, most too weak to march, 60 miles of hostile territory between here and American lines. And every German unit in Bavaria is now converging on this exact location. Waters does the math. How many can you take? Maybe 300, the strongest. Everyone else stays. The Americans face an impossible choice. Take the healthiest prisoners and abandon the rest to German mercy, or lack thereof. Stay and defend the camp until relief arrives, except no relief is coming. Or attempt to move everyone and guarantee the entire column gets overrun. Waters makes the call. Load the 300 fittest men. Move now. Don't wait. But as prisoners scramble toward the half-tracks, a German guard, SS fanatical, refusing surrender, fires from a watchtower. The bullet hits Waters in the hip, shattering bone. He collapses. Medics drag him to a half-track as return fire silences a tower. The task force commander is now wounded. The camp is liberated but not secured, and the sun is rising, which means German aircraft can spot the column. Baum orders a retreat. If you find this kind of untold story as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of impossible courage deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. The column pulls out at 0430 hours. 57 vehicles. Now carrying 307 original task force members, plus nearly 300 liberated prisoners. Overcrowded. Overloaded. Fuel running low. They make it 11 miles. The Germans hit them at dawn near the town of Hallrich. Not a patrol, a coordinated ambush. Tank destroyers positioned on high ground. Infantry in the woods. Artillery pre-registered on the road. The first Sherman explodes before Baum even realizes they're under attack. The second takes a round through the turret. His column is stopped, trapped on an open road, taking fire from 3 sides. Baum orders dispersion. Tanks into the fields, infantry to the tree lines. For 6 hours, they fight. The Shermans duel with German tank destroyers at ranges where one mistake means death. American infantry counterattacks German positions, taking them yard by bloody yard. But ammunition runs low. Fuel runs out. Wounded pile up in the half-tracks with no morphine left to treat them. By noon, Baum has lost 9 tanks, 17 half-tracks. 130 men are casualties. He's surrounded, outgunned, and the German forces are growing stronger by the hour as reinforcements arrive. At 1,400 hours, with his remaining tanks out of fuel and his perimeter collapsing, Captain Abraham Baum gives the order no commander wants to give. Destroy the vehicles. Scatter. Escape and evade. The Americans demolish their own tanks with thermite grenades. They break into small groups, heading west through the forest, trying to reach American lines 60 miles away on foot. Most are captured within 24 hours. Captain Baum, wounded by shrapnel, is found unconscious in a barn. Lieutenant Colonel Waters, his hip shattered, is recaptured by the Germans and returned to Oflag XIII-B. Of the 307 men of Task Force Baum, only 35 make it back to American lines. The mission is a tactical disaster, but strategically it's an earthquake. The German High Command reacts as if the entire front has collapsed. Because if 300 Americans can penetrate 60 miles into Germany and reach a POW camp, what else can American armor reach? Fuel depots, ammunition dumps, the rail hubs that supply the entire defensive line, command headquarters themselves. German 7th Army reorients entire divisions away from the front line to secure rear areas. Tank destroyers that should be fighting American advances are instead deployed to guard crossroads and bridges. Infantry battalions dig in around every supply depot, every communication center. The Wehrmacht is now fighting in 2 directions, forward against the Allied advance, and backward against a phantom threat of deep penetration raids. Except the raids aren't phantom. Patton's 4th Armored Division, watching German units pull back from the front to chase Task Force Baum, exploits the gaps. They advance 40 miles in 2 days, meeting resistance that's confused, disorganized, spread too thin. Towns that should have required battles fall with skirmishes. What the Germans don't understand, what they can't understand, is that Task Force Baum was an anomaly, a one-off mission driven by Patton's personal stakes, not a new American doctrine. But German commanders, looking at their maps, seeing American tanks that appeared 60 miles behind the lines, assume this is the future of the war. They assume every American armored division is now conducting deep raids. They assume nowhere is safe. An army that assumes it's surrounded starts to break. By April 1st, 6 days after Task Force Baum's destruction, the German defensive line in Bavaria is fragmenting. Units retreat without orders. Commanders surrender entire battalions rather than face encirclement. The systematic defense that might have delayed the Americans for weeks collapses in days. The true cost of the Hammelburg raid isn't measured in the men lost. It's measured in the psychological impact on an enemy already teetering on the edge of collapse. Back at 3rd Army headquarters, Patton faces immediate consequences. Omar Bradley, his superior, is furious. The raid cost men and equipment for no tactical gain. Patton's own staff officers leaked to reporters that the general sent a task force to rescue his son-in-law, a scandal that could end his career. Patton denies it publicly, claims he didn't know Waters was there, claims the raid was about demonstrating American capability, not personal rescue. No one believes him, but the investigation stalls because the results speak for themselves. The German rear area has become a chaos zone. The 3rd Army's advance accelerates. By April 11th, Patton's forces reached the Czechoslovak border, 2 weeks ahead of schedule. History will remember Hammelburg as Patton's folly, but the German generals who fought against him remember it as the moment they realized the war was truly lost. Lieutenant Colonel John Waters survives. When Task Force Baum retreated, they left him in the camp infirmary with a shattered hip and a German bullet still lodged near his spine. The SS guards in the chaos of collapsing Reich don't execute him. American forces liberate Oflag XIII-B for good on April 6, 1945, 11 days after the raid. Waters is evacuated to a field hospital, then back to the United States. He'll walk with a limp for the rest of his life. The bullet stays in his back, too dangerous to remove. But he survives, marries Beatrice Patton officially in a ceremony after the war, and serves another 21 years in the Army, retiring as a 4-star general. He never speaks publicly about whether his father-in-law's decision was right or wrong. Captain Abraham Baum, captured and imprisoned, is liberated when the war ends 3 weeks later. He receives a Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership. He never questions the mission, never blames Patton. "We were soldiers," he says in a 1981 interview. Soldiers follow orders. Of the 307 men of Task Force Baum, 293 were killed, wounded, or captured. 35 made it home. But here's what matters. Those men, Baum, Waters, the tank crews who burned, the infantry who fought at Hallrich, the prisoners who waited in the camp, they were pawns in a larger game. Patton used them for personal reasons wrapped in strategic justification. History judges him for it. But the men themselves, they did something extraordinary. They drove 60 miles into enemy territory, liberated a camp, and proved that the Third Reich's interior was hollow. They demonstrated that German defenses were paper-thin, that the Wehrmacht's rear areas were undefended, that the myth of Fortress Germany was just that, a myth. And in doing so, they hastened the end. The war in Europe ends on May 8, 1945, 43 days after Task Force Baum rolls out of Aschaffenburg. Could the Allies have won without that raid? Absolutely. But those 43 days matter. Every day the war continues, concentration camps operate. Civilians die in bombing raids. Soldiers on both sides bleed out in field hospitals. Task Force Baum shaved days off the war. Maybe a week. Maybe more. How many lives is a week worth? The men of Task Force Baum paid for those days with their freedom, their blood, and for some, their lives. They didn't choose the mission. They didn't know the personal stakes driving it. They just followed orders into impossible odds. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state, and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Captain Abraham Baum, Lieutenant Colonel John Waters, and the 307 men of Task Force Baum do not disappear into silence. They drove into hell to bring brothers home. They deserve to be remembered